That's the thing. I see the problem, what God said, and every other cheek or
You were cutting. You didn't cut me off, but you jumped in. Divide foreigners into legal or illegal. Remember, I made that statement. You said, "Hold on, let's slow down and go back to that." That's the point. All that I said before that is leading to that point. God does not divide foreigners into legal and illegal, right? He doesn't say welcome the legal foreigner, punish or reject the illegal one. God's command is about the person, not the policy or paperwork, right? The Leviticus that I've given you guys, Leviticus 19:33-34, is a command, and it's supposed to, if you're a Christian, be a command in the words of God that transcend concepts and policies and the test of time. It's supposed to be able to do that. In there, it doesn't say only if they entered correctly. It doesn't say that. So my whole point is this. If you are a Christian in, let's just use America. If you are a Christian in America and you consider yourself a true follower of God, the policies in our country and the way they're being implemented are ungodly. And you can't change the policy, but if you are a Christian, you then have to make a choice. Am I more American than I am Christian? And am I for or against these policies because I am more American or Christian? And that is what I'm holding to you guys today, to really say, okay, well, no, I'm for Americans' policies, which means I'm just less Christian. And if you're okay with that, then fine. But I think that's a really relevant conversation to have, because I think a lot of individuals who are Christian and conservative and nationalists tend to hold the Bible in a place and cherry pick it, but cherry pick it. And that is almost in line with having a plank in your eye, right? So that's my point.
see that.
All right. So we just heard Dre speaking on Christianity and the current deportations. He says, okay, this is Dre's arguments against deportations. His claims is, okay, you cannot be a true Christian, okay, unless you're cherry picking. You cannot be a true Christian and be okay with the deportations. Okay, but he added an exclusive there. He says that the deportations are evil. Okay, now we're going to examine that. Are they evil? Is that just his judgment call? Is he just calling that? We're gonna look into that, okay? But we're gonna attack all of these different claims. We're gonna try to go by them one by one. All right. So his claim, one of his claims is, and an important claim, is that the Bible doesn't divide foreigners into legal or illegal. He's absolutely correct. Okay, the Bible doesn't do that. Okay? But my question is, but do these illegal immigrants fall under the same description of the Bible's foreigners? All right? Are they foreigners? Yes. But also more no than yes. Okay, that's what I would argue. Okay? Why? Because context is key. Right? Context is key. Okay? Number one, the foreigners in the Bible aren't part of a leftist coup to destabilize a sovereign nation, whereby allowing them to stay would bring about a disruption in our economy, whereby people would suffer, including the very illegal immigrants that are pouring in illegally. Okay? Right? The foreigners in the Bible weren't given strict communication labeling the crossing illegally into Israel as a felony, punishable by law. Okay? Now, you can't ignore the law, which is what any people seem to want to do. This is what people want to seem to do. They want to hopscotch over a law of a sovereign nation. That's one of the big errors that they do. They put it to the side. They hang it up. They hopscotch it. They ignore it. Okay? But we can't really fairly do that. All right? All right. The U.S. already has a legal immigration system in place, which is being and has been ignored and on purpose. It's been ignored purposely. All right. All right. So while there wasn't a labeling in the Bible of legal or legal, okay, nevertheless, that only shows how the context of these foreigners is different, and therefore, this isn't a good parallel to compare with the Bible, okay, or the foreigners that we see in the Bible. While you can't avoid calling them foreigners, right, whether they're legal or illegal, you also can't avoid the context differences between our foreigners and the ones in the Bible. Okay, you have to be consistent and you have to be honest. What would happen if Israel got flooded with millions of foreigners who came as a coup to change their government, flood their economy, and destabilize their sovereignty as a nation? Because these are the claims of over 70 million people who voted for Trump, and possibly more. All right? This is what they feel. We're not going to just ignore them, are we? That would be un-American, right? Oh, that's right. We can't know about this because it didn't happen in the Bible. But it is happening to us, though. Okay? Thanks to the leftist domestic terrorism, okay, that we see going on today. Okay? Is there a context mentioned of those foreigners whereby they come by flooding Israel and disrupt Israel's economy? They do not assimilate and or commit crimes and violence by sheer volume because of their high numbers? No, we don't see that in the Bible. So you see, you can't compare the foreigners in the Bible with the flood of the foreigners that are bombarding our nation today. Okay? Now, does it mean that they should be mistreated? No. He's the one that's making the exclusive claim that extracting them is mistreatment. Okay? So I submit to you that this whole argument hinges on the implications that people want to mistreat foreigners. Once again, the emotional heartstrings are being pulled here. All right? This is the almost 80% of their argumentation. This is what they need to do. They need to prove, by arguing this, they need to prove that you are the meanie because you believe in following laws. You understand about laws that are in place. You recognize the motives behind from the left. Okay, some people have called this not migration, but invasion. Okay, that's what they've called it. This is how modern Americans here feel today, right? Are we just going to discount what they feel? Okay, but because of the chaos, okay, will there be cases of misunderstandings and mistreatment? Unfortunate circumstances because of what the left purposely did by allowing and encouraging this migration of people into our nation who they have obviously no care for and use for their political purposes. Okay, so do you not see the evil in the left by doing this? Okay, so this is all the fault of the left, above those who are nationalistic. Okay, and above even the very illegal immigrants themselves. The guilty ones on the top are the left and all those who thought it was a good idea to flood the nation with so many poor people from various countries like that. They are the meanies here. Oh, and how meanie they truly are. To take advantage of people like that. People of color, too. Dangling a stake over them while they starve. That's what the left does, and it's pure evil. Okay? So it's about he says it's about the person, not the policy. Correct. I agree with that too. But it's also about the context. Okay? He uses Leviticus 19, 33 to 34, and we're going to read it. Okay? And when a sojourner sojourns with you in your land, you shall not mistreat him. The sojourner who sojourns with you shall be to you as a native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh your God. Correct. So again, I agree with him. This means what it means, right? Love your neighbor, love the foreigner, love the sojourner. Okay, correct. But it's stating the sojourner, not the sojourners. And there's no mention of the left in that verse either. Okay? Are we to ignore that context or that lack of context? You must abide by this and do right by the foreigner, which is the illegal immigrant. Correct. Right? I agree with this. So let me break it into Dre's house, dump 400 puppies in his living room, and God forbid he get rid of them. Okay? Don't mistreat them puppies, Mr. Dre. Don't you do it. And please ignore the context of my breaking into your home, the size of your apartment, your 900 square foot apartment. Ignore your finances. Okay? Let's just appeal to your soft heart and love for puppies. Okay? All right? That's the only thing you can use in this context. Your love of puppies, and don't mistreat them. Don't take them out. Don't get rid of them. And since you won't dare to be mean to puppies, you'll be forced to keep them, right? Okay? So, another claim. If you are a Christian in America, the deportations are ungodly. Okay? So, correct and not correct. Right? He's right and he's not right. Okay? For instance, who says, if you don't see this for what it is, then you don't see it as a threat. But you could be extremely out of tune with reality. Okay? According to Dre, I have to consider, am I more American or Christian? Okay? Correct. We do have to analyze ourselves, right? Right? Always be more Christian than American. That's my advice. Okay? So the claim is Christians are cherry picking. Okay? And I agree with Dre. It's correct and not correct. Christians can do this, especially when they're misguided and they don't fully understand what they're doing, why they're doing it. Okay? Christians should not cherry pick the Bible. But the left can very well be cherry picking all over the field. Okay? Here also. And they most assuredly are. Okay? God is very clear on the concept of the treatment of foreigners and immigrants. That's what Dre says. And he is correct. Okay? Question. Can you use the Bible to justify deportation? Yes and no. We've already examined that what a sovereign nation does in implementing its already established laws, especially if it's being used as a coup against its people to destabilize, now you see that it can be justified. Should it deport, separate families? Can you use the justifier to do that? There's a chance that you don't, because you have to be fair, you have to be right? So like I said, to be honest, it's yes and no. If they're seen as an enemy or a plot to destroy your nation, yes. Okay, that's obvious, right? Okay, the left are using the Bible to delegitimize deportation. Okay, are Christians using the Bible to legitimize deportation? I hope they don't. But they don't need to. Because, okay, all this time I've been speaking from the context of the Old Testament Israel as a nation and from the context of a sovereign nation, right? Okay, not from the context of a Christian. Okay? There's no precedent of a new covenant or a Christian land or a geopolitical entity in the new covenant. Jesus spoke out against this. But we are to obey the laws of the land. If you study Romans chapter 13, you recognize that the land is under God itself, and it needs to do right by its people. God will hold them responsible, whether they recognize it or not. Okay? Therefore, you can argue for national sovereignty on behalf of that land. We can be citizens of that land physically, but more importantly, our citizenship is in heaven. The book of Hebrews speaks of a better land for the people of God. The New Jerusalem in the book of Revelation illustrates how it comes down from heaven in the parousia, which is the return of Christ, right? And Peter says we are already, excuse me, a holy nation. The earth has to go through a facelift when the Lord comes back, a restoration as mentioned in Romans chapter 8. It says a new heavens and a new earth. We have to be kind to the sojourner because until Christ returns, we are sojourners through this life ourselves, okay? So we see there is an area in the scriptures where the Jews actually, I wouldn't say that it doesn't say that they deport, okay? But it did show that they separate. And so the sojourner did have their separation from the common citizen of Israel, right? If we read in, I think it's in Nehemiah 13, right? Where foreigners are separated from Israel. Okay, let's read in verse 1 and 2. On that day, they read from the book of Moses in the hearing of the people, and there were found written in it that no Ammonite or Moabite should ever enter the assembly of God, because they did not meet the sons of Israel with bread and water, but hired Balaam against them to curse them. However, our God turned the curse into a blessing. Verse 3, so when they heard the law, they separated all foreigners from Israel. So there is Old Testament precedent where foreigners are separated, okay? And you could say deported. I don't know if it was they were taken out of Israel. It does say separated from Israel, which would mean, how do you separate from Israel without getting them out of the land? So I would say it's more than likely that this was a deportation. Okay? Not that I'm justifying it, but remember, like I said before, at least 80% of their argumentation is trying to convince you that deportations is wrong, when in fact there is precedent for that, and understanding, especially when it comes to law, when it comes to a sovereign nation protecting its land, right? You can't argue against that. And the fact that it is a law that's being broken, why do they always want to mix legal with illegal? Why do they have a proclivity to always disconnect the argumentation behind the fact that we have a legitimate legal process, and we've allowed every year like 1 million new residents into the nation. Somehow that's not good enough. Okay. So, and also the comparing Israel in the Old Testament with today in our laws, in our sovereignty here in our nation, it doesn't always fit the bill. Okay. In this case, the foreigners, they didn't have in Israel 300 million people to keep tabs on like we do here. Okay. So while you can say that the foreigners are the same, we can regard foreigners as the same, whether they're legal or illegal, it still doesn't justify not doing something about an infiltration, especially a purposeful, coup from the left, as we have to suffer this civil issue in our nation, where our nation is torn in two. Okay, this isn't happening in every nation, but it damn well is happening in the United States, where we got problems with the left and the right are constantly at odds with each other. Okay, and by the evil left, they've allowed to abuse the man of color and invite them over from many nations. Okay, some people argue, well, it's because the United States disrupt their nation. But that still doesn't say that we shouldn't help them in their nation. It still doesn't argue that we should just allow them to come into this nation. Perhaps we should help them out in their nation, help build infrastructure over there. Okay, if that's what you want to argue. But that's a separate argument. Okay, so just to let you know, that there are definitely arguments to this. And no, you don't have to feel like if you're not being Christian because you support deportation. Now, I'm a Christian. I didn't vote for Trump, and for the same purposes, because I did see this coming, and I knew that having to extract was going to cause disruption and disrupt lives, and it was going to cause the mess that it is. But it doesn't mean that deportations is inherently wrong, okay, because of it. And so you've got all type of people, Judaizers and atheists and secularists and Muslims who are going to try to make Christians feel bad because they stand with the nation on justifying their own sovereign laws, okay? They fail miserably, okay? Nice try, but not good enough. Okay? So that's basically my response to Christianity and deportations. Deportations and Christianity. Okay, thanks for listening. Until next time, God bless.